Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Wisdom Podcast. I am your host, Janet Sandberg, and today we are joined by the very infectious and energetic Kevin Palmieri. Kevin, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here today.
I am very happy to be here. I'm excited. I am interested to see where we will go with our conversation today, and it is a wonderful day to podcast, so I love it.
It is. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Today, I have a podcast. I have a couple podcasts, and I get to podcast full-time, which is a dream come true, and I am so privileged to have the opportunity to do that, and that is why I am positive and infectious, because I realize how lucky I am to actually get to live my dreams. I'm the ultimate cat dad, and that's really all we need to know. Those two things, podcasts and cat dad.
Okay, how many cats?
I have two cats, Fudge and Ace.
Nice.
And they are, so for the, I think we're doing audio only, right? So for
Correct.
The listeners, I have a full sleeve tattoo on one of my arms, and my hand is next, and I'm going to get the cats on my hand when I have the courage to sit through the excruciating pain that will probably create.
Yeah, that's not going to be a comfortable one.
No, I'm not looking forward to it. I feel like if I just say it enough times publicly,
then you have to do it.
Yeah, it's like, can I really live with myself if I don't do what I've been saying to all of these strangers that I've been meeting on the internet? So I feel, I'm almost there, Jen. I'm close.
Because next time I see you, I'll be like, where's the cat tattoo?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I'm locking myself in. A lot of accountability out there. There's a lot of accountability out there.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears a little bit and get into your story that led you to your dream of podcasting full time and being the ultimate cat dad, because that sounds like a pretty great life. So
yeah, it's good.
It obviously wasn't always so good, or you wouldn't be here on the podcast. So let's go back in time and tell us, how old were you? What was going on when you didn't think life would ever be this good and wasn't worth living?
I was 25. And by all the outside standards, all the external measures of success, I was crushing it. I had a very high-paying job at the time. I didn't have a college degree. I did not plan on ever being any level of successful. So I was what I thought living the dream back then. It was just a different dream.
Mm-hmm.
So high-paying job. My girlfriend at the time was a model. I was quite literally in the best shape I will ever be in because I was preparing for a bodybuilding show. Sports car, new apartment, great friends, all the stuff. It just,
wow.
How could you possibly be unhappy? And
yeah,
right. And I was wildly insecure. I had no self-belief, no self-worth, no idea what I really wanted to do with my life. I just kind of ended up there, and I chased money, and that's kind of where it brought me. So my girlfriend left me. And when she left me, that was my initial rock bottom. Who's ever going to love this version of Kev? I'm broken. Am I ever going to be happy? Am I ever going to find somebody that understands me? How do I fix this? How do I work through this? Unfortunately, Janet, I fell into the trap of thinking maybe I just haven't made enough money yet.
Mm-hmm.
If I go from the 5 figures to the 6 figures, there's an unlock there. It must be the amount of money. I just haven't made enough yet. And why do we choose that arbitrary amount? 6 figures, like that's the place. Okay.
Yeah.
Guilty as charged. So the year after she left, I said, well, I'm going to make the most money I've ever made in my entire life. And I proceeded to spend the next 10 months living on the road because the company I worked for, construction's the easiest way to explain it. We had a bunch of contracts up and down the East Coast of the US. So I was spending weeks and months at a time in different states. But that is directly in alignment with what I wanted. So I was fine with grinding it out and staying up for days on end, right? Like, cool, I'm making money. I'm all for it. So I spent 10 months living on the road, chasing this dream to make as much money as I could. Got to the end of the year, slid open my final pay stub, and I made $100,000 at 26 with no college degree. Nothing changed internally. Didn't feel any different.
Goal achieved.
Now, I always like to say this because I think it's important. Circumstantially, I was in a better place because I had money in the bank.
Sure.
Circumstantially. Mental health wise, no, I don't think that helped me at all. It honestly somehow may have made it worse. because I think the difference between the way people saw me and the way I saw myself just continued to distance and distance and distance.
Right.
I realized that for most of my life, I had lived unconsciously.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So I did what any 27-year-old man would do. I started a podcast about being hyperconscious. I want to be hyperconscious. I want to learn everything about myself. So I started a podcast in 2017 called the Hyperconscious Podcast. Fell in love with podcasting as I fell out of love with my job. I've reached the pinnacle. I am not willing to do what it took to get there again. But as you know, in the beginning, there's not exactly a line of people out the door saying, Janet, this podcast is, you have a really good idea. How much do you need? What's the amount? Let's write down an amount and we'll send it on over so you can do this full time. So I had to keep going to this job that I didn't like. And every time I packed my bag, I would be homesick. I was depressed. I was genuinely would get depressed when I started packing my bag. And I still, to this day, when I travel, when I feel travel coming up, I still get the feels to this day, however many years later it is, 8 years later. So I start calling out of work. I start leaving the job sites early. I'm showing up late. I am not a model employee as I once was, but I have to keep going. I have to find a way to pay the bills. So eventually I was in a hotel room in New Jersey, which is 6 hours from where I lived at the time. I was in New Jersey for work that week. My alarm clock went off at 5:15 or 5:30. I sat up. I slid to the edge of the bed. I was lacing up my work boots. And the best way to explain it is that morning there was 10 televisions on in my head at the same time, and every single one was on a different station.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Right? One was saying, you're stuck here forever. I felt like I got so lucky to get this job. There is no way I'm going to leave this and find something better. There is no possibility. That's not real. That is not a real thing. If I did leave, what would my friends think? Because I make more money than all my friends.
Right.
That's a big piece. What's my family going to think? I make more money than anybody in my family ever has. There's a lot of significance that comes there.
Yeah.
And then what am I going to do with my life? I never had a plan A. All my plan Bs fell through. I think this is plan C. I don't know if they make plan D. I don't think that's a thing. I think you run out eventually. And here I am sitting on the edge of a bed in a crusty hotel room 6 hours away from anybody who cares about me. And I had the thought that if I was just to take my life, I would take all my problems with me. And I wouldn't have to worry about it. And that wasn't the first time I had that thought, but it was the most real time that I ever had that thought. I reached out to a friend of mine who's now my business partner, and I kind of explained to him what I was thinking and what I was feeling. And we had a lot of vulnerable conversations at that point. So it wasn't an extreme feat of courage for me to reach out. And I just told him what I was going through. And he said a lot of things. He had a lot of wisdom. But the thing I remember the most was over the last couple of years, your awareness has changed a ton, but your environments have remained the same. I think it's time for you to change your environment. He's very wise. He's far more wise than I am, for sure. Most of what I've learned through him. And that gave me, I think it gave me a couple things. I think it gave me permission to make a different decision. It gave me perspective that there might be hope even if I can't see it.
Yes.
And it just felt like I was supported. And there was no judgment. There was no looking down on it. Was, yeah, I'm here for you. What do you need? What can I do to help? So I ended up leaving that job 2 or 3 months later. And then him and I partnered up. And I've been trying to figure out how to do this for full time since 2018. And when I left my job, my depression pretty much went away completely. Anxiety got drastically worse. I'm being honest.
Traded one for the other. Yeah.
Yeah, but I can count on 2 hands how many times I've sat down and said, like, I feel like I'm going through a little bit of depression right now. When I left my job, it was a night and day difference. And again, I'm not telling you to leave your job. Circumstantially, things aligned, and then I was also broke for the next 3 or 4 years, and that sucked in different ways. But
going from one extreme to the other,
100%. It was brutal. But
not the extreme direction you want to go in either.
No, it was like one big step forward, leaving my job and doing what I loved, but like 99 very, 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 very also big steps backwards where you can't pay the bills, and my car broke down and I couldn't get it fixed, and I couldn't afford Christmas presents for my now wife, but girlfriend at the time. It was just some of the most trying times ever. but that is kind of how we happened upon where we are today.
Hmm. I love that. I love that you reached out in that moment, that you're like, I need to talk to somebody, I need to call somebody, because I think that's what gets us, is that we don't, because we're like, nobody else in the world has ever felt this way and nobody will understand what I'm feeling. And we're not only afraid to admit the thoughts that we're having and the feelings that we're feeling, but also to tell that to somebody else takes an incredible amount of bravery and courage. And the fact that you called the right person.
Yeah. I always say that. Imagine there are certain humans that if I reached out to, they probably would have said, well, just get to Friday and then just veg out over the weekend. Or, Kev, nobody really likes their jobs.
Yeah.
Suck it
Oh,
up.
it's
Or,
fine. Just go to work.
yeah. Or, yeah, it must be so hard making $120 an hour.
Exactly.
Like, I would kill for that. It's like, no, I understand. I know what it's like to think all of those things. One of the things I always try to say, because it's really hard to hear an empowering message when you're really struggling. It can be really hard.
It all sounds really kitschy a lot of the times.
Yeah. I always say, if you're doing really well right now in life, now is the time to start being vulnerable, because you get the umbrella before the thunderstorm. You don't try to build the umbrella in the middle of the storm. You're going to get wet, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be windy, and it's going to be really hard to do it. But if you buy the umbrella, you keep in your car, you always have it there for a rainy day. I think vulnerability can be similar, where when you're doing really well, it's easier to do scary things.
Yeah.
When you're really struggling, you're already feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. It's a lot harder to reach out. So that's always my advice anytime I'm talking about mental health, is if you feel like your mental health is in a really good spot, start building those relationships now for the days that maybe it isn't. That way, you know, you're doing it proactively, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, you and your friend had already had good conversations. So you knew that he was a good person to call in that situation.
100%.
And especially from my perception in male relationships, like, you guys don't really talk the way that women talk. You know, you talk about the game or you talk about work, but you don't talk about yourselves and your feelings and that vulnerability. So
yeah.
How did you and this friend do that? Was that just unique to you guys? Do you have lots of friendships like that?
Him and we just have such a unique history. We went to the same middle school. We went to the same high school. Both of our fathers weren't around, so we have a similar core wound. And we have very similar core beliefs. I want to be the most positive male I can be. I don't want to be toxic masculine. I want to be balanced. I want to be healthy. I want to be productive. I want to be constructive. And he has the same desire. So for us, it was never about having the machismo. It was never about I cried yesterday on our podcast. I was bawling my eyes out yesterday, 24 hours ago. I was bawling my eyes out on the podcast. So I think I knew he would never judge me.
Yeah.
And he knew I would never judge him. And we have very, very, very high standards for each other, especially when it comes to character. That's what we care. When we started this, the other thing, Janet, when we started this, I thought there was going to be bodybuilding bros like me listening to the podcast. It was emotionally driven women. And I realized very quickly that I wanted to make sure that there was never a woman in our community who felt unsafe around us. That is not acceptable. I do not want that. I understand the immense responsibility I have, and I hold that very close to my heart, and it's very important to me. So I think that's a big piece of it. One of the things I did early in my vulnerability journey is I remember when I would hang out with my friends and I would leave, I would hug them and I would say, I love you, brother. That was like the first thing for me. And in the beginning, it was weird. It was very weird. But now it's normal. I say that to my friends all the time. And I have a very small knit group of friends. So I think obviously that makes it a little bit easier. So I think it's a mixture of all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that, because vulnerability and that emotional level that you have with people doesn't just come by itself. I mean, sometimes it comes if you've grown up together or their family and you've experienced a lot of stuff together, but you can create those close relationships and those vulnerable relationships just by deciding that that's what you want them to be.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hella awkward at first. One of my good friends, she's very good. I grew up in a family where we didn't emote. So, but she's just very open with I love yous and I appreciate you. And I'm like, I gotta be more like her, And the first time I told somebody that I appreciated them, it was the weirdest thing. I was like, oh my God, like, what am I saying? And how are they gonna respond? And of course they lit up. They were like,
Of course.
thank you. But yeah, you have to put yourself out there sort of twice as far at the beginning.
It's hard. It's hard. But once you start seeing the benefits of it, then you start to understand what a really deep connection feels like. It's just below surface level. And when it comes to vulnerability, usually somebody has to go first. So if you are setting the pace and you're showing that this is cool here, that's what we do, I think that's a superpower. I really do. And I think that's what brings people together. I think there's two things that bring people together: success and insecurities. I think those are really the two. When you see somebody successful, you want to, I want to be like that person. I want to get around that person. But when you see somebody who is very honest about their insecurities, it connects us. Like, wait, you are where you are uniquely in life and you still or have struggled with blank, blank, blank. Interesting. Maybe that means the stuff I'm struggling with is something I can work through to get to the place I want to get to. Oh, okay. So I think it's those two things. And I think as you become more quote unquote successful, the more you share your insecurities, the more you can actually help people.
Yes.
That's a huge key for at least for me in our community and when I'm talking, because I'm just a regular dude and I have my fears and I have my traumas and I have my triggers and I have my insecurities. And I like talking about them because I think that's probably the most helpful thing I can say. I could give you a quote. You could put it on a little thing and maybe it's going to inspire someone, but I think it's important to understand that everybody has their own unique struggles. I think it's very valuable.
Yeah. Well, that's what this podcast is about,
100%.
saying, we look like normal people on the outside. We look like we're successful and that we have it all in whatever way you want to qualify that. But we've all been there. Every single person on this podcast, which is now in its second year, and I keep getting more people coming every week who want to share their stories, saying at one point in my life, I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to keep living. I thought this was stupid. There's too much struggle, too much trauma, too much, but it's okay. We all get through it one way or another. And it is amazing the breadth of stories that I've heard in the past year and a half since I've been doing this. Like, everybody's got something, and you don't have to compare your story to somebody else's story. What you went through, looking like you were this, rich, ultra successful dude on the outside, but still suffering on the inside. Whereas other people, were just suffering, looked like they were suffering on all the levels, and everybody gets through it. If you decide you want to get through it, you can. And it's just by making those little steps, like we said, deciding to be more vulnerable in relationships, deciding to take that next step forward, deciding to quit your job because that's what was making you unhappy, knowing that there would be hardships to go through afterwards. But you just do it. You decide and you do it. And if that doesn't work out, you make another decision. Nothing is ever written in stone.
Yeah. I was naive when I left my job, so
well, you were in your 20s, so
right. I think a big piece of it was I was naive, and I thought this was going to work out a lot faster than it did. But I still believe I was better off doing it the way I do it. Can I add one more thing before?
Oh, yeah.
I always try to relay this message, especially on podcasts that are catered for mental health. So we had the pleasure of interviewing somebody one time. His name is Kevin Hines, and Kevin Hines is in a very rare group of humans where he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and survived.
Wow.
And his intention was to take his life when he jumped.
Sure.
And he said something on our podcast that I will never forget, and I always try to relay the message. He said, the second my foot left the railing, I regretted it, and I wished I didn't do it. And that is such a rare perspective to get because statistically, most people that do that in that way aren't around to tell their story. So
Yeah.
I always throw that out there because just getting that perspective can be powerful and hopefully can help somebody maybe make a different decision than they're feeling right in this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, what was it? Was there anything specific that I know you had that conversation with your friend and he was like, had some amazing advice, but was there anything specific that kept you here? Like, oh, I still want to do this. I still want to, were there things in your life you still wanted to accomplish? Were there people that you didn't want to leave or you just decided not today?
I think when he painted the possibility that I could do what I'm doing today, I believed it would be worth it to try.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm somebody who just won't, if I don't think it's worth it, I just won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But if I think it's worth it, I will almost do whatever it takes to get there. And I just had a deep belief. I just think it was like, I didn't have the belief to think that I could do anything else. Because I didn't even have the belief to think I was capable of doing what I was already doing. So I can't imagine doing anything different. He just gave me that. And I knew that if I partnered up with him, I would be more successful than I would be by myself. And that to me, that will be worth it. And I also think I had a decent amount of self-awareness at the time. And I realized I'm a really good number two. So if somebody just tells me what to do, I'll just do it. Awareness was my issue. I just didn't know what to do. It's hard to do better if you don't know better. I didn't know what to do. And he had the awareness and he could help me stay accountable. So I think it was really that. I just had a deep belief that if I just kept doing this, it would be worth it. And I still hold that belief today. My life is harder than it's ever been in terms of, I thought success was going to make life easier. That's weird. That didn't actually happen that way. Okay. We'll talk about that. But I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been.
Yeah.
So there's something to that. So I think the worth it factor is probably the big thing that helped keep me here, I would say.
Yeah. And I love that also where you're like, I'll just try this. I don't know if it's going to work, but it's worth a try.
Yeah.
And that's really all that we need for the next day. Try something different, try something new. Obviously, if we keep doing the same things over and over, nothing is ever going to change. Yeah. So it's just, I'll try this. And having those friends and mentors and whoever you have in your life that can give you that little bit of guidance of what to try next and how to try it can be really valuable also.
Yeah. Very important. Very important.
Yeah. When we're in that place, we can't really see anything. You turn in every direction looks the same. You're just like, I just don't know what to do next or where to go or how to do it. And that's where those friendships, and even if it's a professional friendship, with a therapist or somebody like that who can be like, well, you could try this. And therapists don't always suggest things. I know that's their job. They usually plant good seeds, even if they don't outrightly tell you what to try.
Yes. I've had really, really good results with therapists and counselors. So that's something I'm always big on that too. It's something I was so afraid to do. And I was like, this is going to be terrible. And then I started looking forward to it. And that's the sign of something that is helpful, right? So I always was grateful I did it. And I never regretted it.
Yeah. And I noticed a lot of times now with my therapist, like I just go in and I talk for 45 minutes and he barely says anything. And by the time I'm done telling him about whatever is going on, I've kind of come up with my own answer.
Yeah.
He might say like a couple of things. And sometimes I walk in and I'm like, why do I pay you? I just figure out my own stuff.
I have clients that do the same thing. I have clients that I'm helping them with their business and they just talk for 50 minutes. 50 of the 60 minutes, they just talk and they say, what do you think? And I say, I'm pretty sure you just answered everything.
Right.
Sometimes you just need somebody to listen because.
And that safe space.
Yeah.
You just want to say all the things.
Yeah. You just want to get it out. Like I have all this stuff. I just want to get it out because in my head, it sounds different than when I say it out loud. Mm-hmm. And it takes courage to say it out loud. Right. So it goes back to vulnerability. Vulnerability, I guess, is the topic of discussion today.
It is. And also having that professional sounding board where even if they're not saying anything, you can like read their face, be
Mm-mm.
like, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
going with this, you know.
They're not writing a novel every time you talk. It's like, wait, why are you looking at your notepad again? Why are you writing so much? What are you writing about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My therapist never writes.
Interesting.
I don't know how he does his job, but he never takes notes during session. So
Hmm.
he must have a really great memory and writes it all down afterwards. But
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
And I've been seeing him for like 15 years, so never has written down anything.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Must have a yeah, must
Curious.
have a bulletproof memory.
He must. He must. Anyways, what words of advice do you have to sort of sum up everything for somebody who is in the darkness right now and not feeling like there's much hope in continuing?
One thing is just do something extremely small. You don't have to do something today that is going to change everything in a second. I think that's like the self-improvement bumper sticker is like take massive action and change your life now. No. Most of us didn't get to the place we are today based on what we did yesterday. It's an accumulation of events, it's accumulation of beliefs, it's accumulation of traumas, whatever it is. Just do something extremely small. Even if that means just getting out of bed. Awesome. That is progress. Even if that means making your bed. Awesome. That is progress. I would just start there because the best place to start is where you are.
Yes.
The best way to get out of a hole is to stop digging the hole. And
Yes.
it sounds like terrible advice because it's not like a checklist of things to do, but my small is different than Janet's small, and Janet's small is different than my small. And so, yeah, I would do the smallest humanly possible thing you can do that will actually feel like progress. That would be one. And then I would do the smallest possible thing that you can do that also feels like courage. Because it might not be FaceTiming someone saying, hey, I'm really struggling. It might be something else. It's personal to you. You know better than I do what you'll actually feel comfortable doing. I would challenge you to do that. Those are the two things I would say.
I love that. Something small what did you say? Something small that's going to feel like progress.
Yep.
And something small that's going to feel like courage.
Yep.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that.
They're
And
both
keep
very
doing
personal.
that every day for the rest of your life. You're golden.
Yeah. That's the thing is like, I think one of the most common misconceptions about humanity is where somebody is today is where they have been forever, and where you are today is where you will be forever. And neither of those are true.
Yes.
Right? Neither of those. That's the beauty of story. You heard my story, but that was 7 minutes. 7 years broken into 7 minutes.
Yeah.
If you really think about that, the majority of my life, I haven't been where I am today.
Right.
For the majority of my life, I'm going to try to figure out how to get here. I just think that it's so important to understand that. It's just so important to understand that where you are today is not where you have to be a year from today. 165 days is a long time. If you read 1 page a day, you're going to finish a book.
Mm-hmm.
If you save $1 a day, you're going to have $365. Yeah, focus on the small stuff, not the big, massive, life-changing stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And that, I love that. Save $1 a day, you'll have $365. You won't have 6 figures, and that's okay. There's so much stuff out there, shoving, like you said, that magical dollar amount down your throats that you're nothing unless you make 6 figures. And that's just, it's not true.
No, and you have to be very careful who you allow into your brain. Social media, media in general, but social media specifically, is a weird place where some people aren't thinking about how they're making people feel. They're just thinking about the numbers that come when they say certain things. And there's some very ignorant stuff on social media. So be very, very careful. There is a correlation between social media and mental health, for sure. Do I know the studies?
Definitely.
No, I don't know the studies, but they're out there for sure. So be very careful who you are willing to give space to in your brain, because your brain's a wonderful place and not everybody deserves a spot there.
Exactly. And it's funny because I was scrolling, I always get these, the ads on Facebook and Instagram, small business ads and stuff. And it was this woman going on about how webinars are dead and that's not how you sell anymore and blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, so join my webinar so I can tell you how to not do webinars. And I was like, are you aware of what you're saying and what you're doing?
I had a podcast client of mine who I coach reach out, and he said, "What do you think of this ad?" And I said, "The fact that they say that they have whatever it was, listeners in all 275 countries," I said, "There aren't that many countries. So that ad is not real."
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's territories, but I said, that's how I know. You know how I know this is BS? There aren't that many countries. So you can't possibly be listened to in that many countries.
Right.
Makes sense. It's pretty simple and straightforward. But I think that's why self-awareness, I know this is like tangent. We mentioned tangents in the beginning. I think that's why self-awareness is so important, because when you are aware at a higher degree, you can't be taken advantage of from a place of awareness.
Yes.
I will never buy a fit detox tea just because I've been working out for a long time and I've been a personal trainer and I've studied health and nutrition. My awareness is just higher than that. Everybody has that, but I think that's one of the reasons why awareness is so important, because it's very hard. If my car breaks down, I'm in trouble. You could tell me anything. You need a new flux capacitor and it's 15 grand. It's like, yeah, it sounds expensive. All right. Can we take care of that today? How long is that going to take? That's why we go to mechanics. But I think that's also one of the reasons mechanics have such a bad rap, because they know most people don't have the level of awareness. And okay, tangent over. Tangent done.
Yes. Yeah. So in deciding which step towards progress and step towards courage you're going to take, just be aware of outside influences. Make sure that feeling is coming from within you. I think is sort of what we're trying to say here.
I appreciate the connection. I appreciate
not listening to other people tell us what courage is, or tell us what progress is, or tell us what success is.
Yes.
It's personal to who you are, what your situation is, and where you want to go.
Thank you for connecting the tangent and bringing it back. Progress is personal. That's it. Progress is personal. And I think it's just important to remember that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Kevin, so much for being here today and sharing your story and your wisdom and being vulnerable.
I appreciate it. It takes two to tango. I always say that it takes two to tango. I appreciate the safe space. I appreciate the judgment-free zone, and I appreciate you and what you're doing. So I appreciate you having me very much.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll connect again, I'm sure, and keep making progress. Thank you for listening. Remember that you are loved, you are worthy, you are valuable, you are meant for more, and that it really does get better. If you are in crisis, there are numbers that you can call or text to get the help that you need. That information for Canada and the US is in the description below each episode. If you are in immediate crisis, please call 911. We love you, and I hope you'll listen again.